This is the moment we've been waiting for. A time in human history where exponential technologies have rendered the world more virtually connected, more empowered, and more informed than ever before. Yet, we're still suffering. A lot. So, how do we make the most of our modern tools to amplify and connect with what truly matters? To light the way, I've asked some friends to join us around the proverbial fire to share stories of discovering their purpose hidden within life's winding path and to explore the future we really want. Let's meet where community, technology, and ancient wisdom converge. What gives your life meaning? What delights and what buoys you when seas get rough? When everything seems to change before you can even grasp what it was, how do you hear your inner voice and find the spark to follow? Today we're here with Chelsea Sonksen, founder and editor-in-chief at Eridita Creative House, writer, editor, curator, and natural-born community builder. Chelsea started her journey of elevating and connecting visionary women with the creation of Boss Ladies magazine back in 2016. This artfully designed editorial spotlights success stories from female entrepreneurs across cities. Once you read about these women, you just want to become one. So luckily, Boss Ladies spurred Work Sesh, a weekly space and circle where creative professional women come together, share experience and inspiration to fuel good work. Work Sesh then became Eridita Circle. No longer solely dedicated to powerhouse productivity, this circle widens the aperture to include the softer, peripheral space of the heart and the whole self journey. They happen weekly, and you too can join by Zoom these days. I met Chelsea back in 2013 at the writing table of an LA novelist we were both assisting. Thanks to our shared passion for writing and circle, Chelsea and I have been friends ever since. Frankly, she has been a light on my path, reminding me to dream big and bring ideas to life with the help of good company. For context, this conversation happened near the beginning of the COVID sheltering in place period back in early May 2020. Our talk ranges from stories about responding creatively to challenges like living through a global virus lockdown to the life raft of writing and expression when moving through grief, such as the loss of her sister. Creativity and community is the through line. Luckily, we humans are built to adapt, especially well together. So we invite you to join us in refueling through hope found in beauty and connection. Chelsea, thank you and welcome.
Oh, thank you, Rose. It's so sweet to hear about my life from your eyes.
Well, we're just beginning. I've got more to say about you. So, Chelsea, when I talked to you about this project originally, what were you hoping we would talk about?
Oh, what a good question. Ideas, which is so vague, but I find myself pulled toward people who like to sink into conversation about ideas, and that's why I enjoy our conversations so much. So what does that mean? Like ideas about what the future wants to look like, what we think the future will look like, ideas about technology and business and community and the connection between people and the way that we want to show up to the planet as the planet's changing so quickly, and all of the intentionality required to shape the lives both for ourselves and collectively that we want to be in or something. So we can fit all of that in one conversation. That'd be really wonderful.
Okay, we'll see what we can do. I feel like we've managed to touch on a few of those across a few serendipitous meetings outside of our sheltering home moments, whether that's in front of your apartment 8 feet apart or you happening upon me dancing under a tree while I was trying to get some exercise. Chelsea, we will go into a few different of those directions, but before, what did I just interrupt you doing? What were you in the middle of before we started to speak?
Right before this, I was actually on a call with my friend Kim talking about paper airplanes, which is a newspaper project that we're cobbling together over this like shelter in place moment. Um, and right before that, I was in the middle of yoga in my living room. So it went from yoga to editorial meeting to conversation with Rose, and all within the same little space inside here.
Yep, that summarizes life in April 2020. And actually, Chelsea, happy Earth Day. This is Earth Day all around the world, and it is absolutely gorgeous outside here in Santa Monica. Blue skies and birds chirping, and I'm trying, hopefully you can't hear all the ambient noise. I don't think you can, it's pretty quiet right now. So paper planes, Chelsea, do you want to share what is that? Or, I mean, you mentioned it's a newspaper. What, maybe just a few words of your hope for it. What inspired it?
Um, so it was inspired by, I can't remember if you and I talked about this already, but I'm going to tell you again now. It was inspired by this show that I used to watch at my friend's house on like CBS or something when we were in elementary school, called Early Edition. Early Edition was this amazing newspaper that this man would get delivered the day before. It was like he got the paper the day before these things happened, and then he spent his day like running around the city trying to stop all the bad things from happening. And as a kid, I found myself like very intrigued by this idea of like editorial as magic, and the idea that like there was a newsroom somewhere where people were putting together like the cure, the antidote for all the bad things that were going to happen. And so I began thinking about that as I get the Sunday Times. And there's something about like you're in this moment anyway that's like so energetically and emotionally heightened, and then you open the door on Sunday and in front of you is this newspaper that just has all of these terrible headlines, which like, you know, it's just the reality of what's happening in the world right now is pretty heavy, and the photography and imagery is all really heavy too. And so I found myself thinking a lot about the fact that there's not one reality. Like the newspaper portrays a certain lens into reality, and yet other realities exist at the same time. And so many friends in this moment are thinking about interesting things, or thinking about things in a new way, or are making art of their families or of their home spaces or of their internal life in ways that they haven't ever accessed before. And I wanted a newspaper to compile all those things together. And as our designer Alex said today in an email, he said, you know, this is really an artifact of the art that's emerging from this moment, and it's going to tell the story of a particular moment in human history. And it doesn't need to do that in a lofty way, but I think that is one of the things that we're interested in exploring in the project.
Oh, I love that. Oh my gosh, artifact of this moment, exploring the interior spaces. What are the headlines worth reading that actually could make a potentially positive difference in our lives? God. Thank you so much for sharing about what's happening in the creative studio and in Paper Planes. And I really, really look forward to seeing that come to life. So yes, this moment, artifact of this moment, which we are all living all around the world right now in a way, having some form of a shared experience. I don't know if we've ever had like this, especially in the last couple hundred years, where more than half of the world is at home and united for common wellness. This is also seen as a crisis. Even though, of course, we've been in the midst of crisis for some time, if you're looking through the ecological lens, or looking at poverty or hunger, you know, we've been in crisis that way in our modern times for a while. And I think I personally went through a profound personal crisis like 6 months before COVID. And I thank God pretty much every day that I was able to come across that peak before this happened. Because right now I have some resources for my own solitude that make this a relatively peaceful and pleasurable moment to be with myself. But I know for a fact that when going through crisis, peace and pleasure, for me, I remember almost wanting to gag when a therapist told me to try to have fun in the middle of crisis. So I know like it just depends on the moment people are in. And just to pay maybe a little bit of homage, but also connect with that moment right now of crisis as well as opportunity. Have you gone through anything that feels for you like crisis, not necessarily this moment, but maybe in your life? And yeah, would you be comfortable sharing a little bit about what that was for you, and maybe also like what helped you through it? What were some of the touchstones or the things that brought peace or hope to move through that?
Yeah, yeah. There's something about the word crisis that I find really interesting. Because the truth is, I'm not sure that I've ever thought about anything, any experience that I'd had as a crisis, and that just feels interesting in itself. There have been some really hard things. Yeah, so I feel like after our call, I'm going to spend some time like with the word crisis and thinking about like what that means to me and why these things didn't feel like that. But I can talk to you about hard things all day. I mean, you know this, Rose, but people watching don't. So my little sister died when she was 17 in a car accident. And it was a couple months before my senior year at college. And I really didn't want to go back to school. And Mom felt it was really, really important for me to be back in a world beyond loss and grief and sadness and home and missing. So I went to school, and I moms are always right. They're always right. It was the right thing to go. And I feel really grateful that like what I was studying at school was writing and poetry. And so I got to live in a world of honesty and language and poetry and professors who are like, poetry professors are able to be in emotional space. Like they really are, in a way that, you know, had I been an economics major or some science major, you may not have found that within like the leadership in that department. But English professors are a special breed of human. And so, yeah, I was sort of cocooned within this space of guidance from the world of poets with incredible emotional depthness. And I was asked and forced, really, to write about things. And the only thing I could write about was her, and was it, and was losing her. And I found the creative process through that to be healing, life-giving. And now, you know, it's 9 years since then. And I realize I'm really interested in how memory works. And this many years past that moment, like my body, I think in like an effort of self-preservation, has forgotten a lot a lot of what that pain felt like, but also a lot of the joy that she brought. Like, I found that my body has chosen to let go of a lot of it, I think because it was too hard to hold on to it. And so now still those pieces that I wrote in school are really healing, but for a different reason. It allows me to pull her back when she gets too far away. um, so and my mom passed away 7 months ago. And when she was in the ICU, it was the same thing. I was sitting in the waiting room outside the ICU, writing these like little nonsense prose poems and texting them to some friends. Because there's something about, for me, it's like when emotion just lives in your body and there's no language around it, it's too, like I can't hold it. It's like too much to be in me. But as soon as there are words like give it structure. Words help me see it clearly outside of me, and it means that I don't have to hold it, and I can tell other people what it feels like. And it also is something about like saying what it is creates space for tomorrow to look different. So you can write a different story tomorrow if you want to. I don't know. Words words are the space that brings me back to myself and back to calm. And yeah.
Oh, God. Thank you, Chelsea. Thank you so much for sharing those stories and going there, and also giving voice to, I would say, a lot. I would imagine a great deal of writers. Like that is a huge. I relate to what you're saying. At times in my life where the experience itself is too much to handle or hold, or really just can feel like a tsunami for me. Being able to write about it, yeah, it's like you said it beautifully. You can hold it and you can look at it, and there's this more of like a loving relationship with it and an objectivity. It's not me, though it's passing through me. It won't be me forever. And the thing I'm relating to, I'm having an experience, whether that's the loss of a loved one or the loss of a loved thing, or whatever it is, joyous, grieving, anything. So, the gift in that too is just expression, to be reminded of expression and the power and beauty. And I loved, I'd never thought of that before, that writing is like a vessel in a way that you were able to process the grief around your sister. And then it came back and fed you later when it was time. I had never thought of it that way, and I hadn't heard that from you. And we've been in this writing group, which you brought me into. Thank you. It's been a bright light in my life during this. And something that you mentioned in that group was like the love boomerang. And it sounds like, writing as a love boomerang. A little time vessel that you can then come back to when it's actually time, and when there's a new way and a new self to hold the information again.
Yeah. I also think that, I don't know, there's something about taking a very specific, like sensorial experience in a moment and being able to share it with your friends, that like, then when you're beyond that moment, your friends like hold your history with you. And there's something about that I really treasure. I don't know how people who don't write I don't, I don't know. I don't know how they live.
Spoken as a true writer. You know what? I will say, I was living in France for a few years, and for the majority of my life since I was 10 years old, and my mom gave me my first journal. Gave me my first journal, 10, filled every page of that thing. I think I still have it somewhere. It had hemp leaves on it. That's a little weird. Um, but I started recognizing that something was a little bit weird when I noticed I was not writing in France. Like that's a canary in a what is it, mine?
Coal mine, yeah.
Thank you. If I'm not writing, something's off. Even if, now, maybe there are times also where like the field goes fallow, and I was exploring, this is true too, I was exploring life without as much dependence upon words. Really quick aside, when I was in high school and my parents had divorced, I was in theater, and we had this renowned theater director, Frank Ford. And if anyone's watching this from Santa Monica or went to Samo High, they know Frank Ford. And he looked at me one day on stage. I was playing Martha in Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf by Edward Albee. I'm a blonde, 5'4" Disney child. I was working for Disney at the time. And I was up on stage playing a 52-year-old drunk woman who was barren and beyond pissed at life for the cards that it had dealt. And he looked at me as I was smiling, my normal rose smile on stage through my lines. And he said, "Where's your subtext?" And I looked at him, I was like, "What do you mean?" I had written tons of subtext, how she felt, why she was angry, what had happened. He goes, "You made it all in words." But the thing was, that is how I was surviving. Words were my life raft. If I didn't have words, the divorce would have killed me or led me to drugs or gotten into other weird crap, because the drugs were the words were keeping me safe. It was containment and separation enough, because I think as feeling people or sensitive people can be too much. Anyway, so then began the journey of how do I turn the subtext into actual feeling and let myself to feel the anger, to feel the grief, to feel the weight. Okay.
Yeah.
That was our main entry. And before we leave this shadow space of crisis and hard stuff, and how we move through hard stuff, and frankly, the absolute necessity of hard stuff. We don't move through life without hard stuff. It's also a gift. So we talked a little bit about this right before recording. One of my questions, and I intend to ask this probably to each person I sit down with, because I think it is so important, and that is something around, Chelsea, how do you name or see or experience your own shadow? Because to me, and I love this about you, you are a real whole human being. I don't see you hold back in being with people. I don't see you just shining your light. I also see you offering the gift of the sad space, or the trying space, or the whatever space, all of it. Is there something that you feel like you've lived with that's been kind of the heavier sidekick in being Chelsea?
It's so interesting. I was watching Hook last night, and like just so happened to be watching it before we spoke. And I was actually thinking about your question about the shadow, as Robin Williams' character is like chasing his shadow through the nursery, right? And I was thinking, like, I need to go back as an adult and rewatch all of these childhood movies to like understand what the adults who wrote them were trying to say, right? Because you don't feel that as a child. Like, as a child, what does it mean that someone's chasing their shadow? Nothing. It literally just means that. But I feel like I think the question is a hard one for me because like it doesn't feel like a separate thing. It's just all here. It's just I don't know, something that I've been thinking about a lot lately is like the way in which we protect ourselves by spending time when we're in our more sad, grittier, cornery parts of ourselves. Like spending time with people who know how to be in that space for themselves and who like can recognize it in others. I think it's really difficult to be in one of those spaces that feels like sandpaper and to be with someone who just feels like, you know, sunshine, and just there's a lot of anger that can come up in those moments. And I don't know, in the circle, which we'll talk about later maybe, but for the first year, our prompt every week, almost every single week, was like, what is something that it was like up and down. It was like, what's something that like you're proud of and you're creating, and something that's going well right now, and what is something that feels challenging and is hard. And I don't know, it meant something to me to understand and begin to get to know people from that place of like, it's both all the time in every moment, and letting both show up to every conversation where we meet each other. And maybe that being the only way that we can actually meet each other is showing up with both. Yeah.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Yes. You're making me think of this quote my mom shared with me yesterday, and I feel like I'm going to butcher who said this. It's not Robert Frost. It's someone who wrote the book, The Road Less Traveled. And it's something about only when we share our brokenness can community or real relationship occur.
Yeah.
That without that, there's something, like you said, like makes you angry. It's like it's missing. It's like it's not whole. It's not right. I love that you ask the both. And how beautiful that what I'm hearing is like you don't have a fragmented sense of self where the shadow is something else. The shadow, you pointed to different places in your body. Yes. Okay. So moving from that cave of, you know, the harder times and the shadow self and you know, the moon, it's like the dark side of the moon, the light side of the moon. It's just the moon, but we do have all the sides. On the light side of the moon, what do you feel are like you're in the middle of creating paper planes, or you're in the middle of writing your book, which I know you did, or you're in the middle of creating Eridita, and there are bound to be roadblocks. There are bound to be hurdles. What are the allies, or what does that look like? Like, what happens when you meet a block? What do you call upon in yourself to move through that? What are your allies inside?
They're not in me. They're outside of me. It's all my friends. It's like, yeah, it's like, you can't do these things alone. I'm just going to keep referencing Hook because goodness gracious, how can you not? And, you know, I was coming up against like something within Paper Planes yesterday that was just like making it feel sharper than it needed to. And, you know, there's that scene where Robin Williams is, as an adult, coming back to Neverland and learning or remembering how to fly, you know, and he's finally doing it. He was remembering the day that his son was born, and, you know, he's hovering in this bliss, and then he like comes back to the present moment and starts like falling to the earth. And Tank yells to him, you know, just like grab onto your happy thought. And I was like, that's it. Like, and for me, like those happy thoughts, like it's people, it's within friendship. And I don't know, I feel really grateful to like be in this circle of creative women who like, when you're making things, everyone expects that you're gonna like be sick of making it at some point, or need a big push, or like need a little hand, or need a little resource, or and to be in a group of friends where people push when you need to push and help when you need help, and I don't know, it's really special to me.
You brought, well, I love the fact that the shadow is integrated. All the stuff that creates, like, that is Chelsea is there. And then when it comes to like getting through something, it's out of you. It's
Yeah.
I love that though, because I think we expect too much of ourselves sometimes to be able to do it alone, or to be the entrepreneur and the pioneer, as if it were a solitary, or needed to be solitary for it to be worthwhile or something. So, and this is exactly integrated into, you know, the original inspiration for the subjects of this project, is that you know, emerging space, which I'm calling, particularly through technology or entrepreneurship, as well as indigenous or ancient wisdom, or basically original knowing, you know, what's in here, intuition, nature, and then community. That community piece, connection, communication is so important to be able to withstand, for me, this triangle. Is what represents strength and durability.
Yeah.
And within that circle, and you brought up circle, so I want to come back to Eridita circle. And I think this is so important. Like, circle, I mean, can you help break down what is Eridita? What inspired these circles? Or what did you think it was going to be? What is it now? And can you, I have no doubt it'll take us beyond the buzzword of circle, which I think we're actually seeing more and more on Instagram, or like, you know, how to create your own women's circle, which is fantastic. That if there's going to be a buzzword, like, great that be circle.
Yeah.
Like, and so can you just help maybe people who don't know, what is circle? Are you, is it a cult? Is it, what is that for you?
It is a cult. Okay, I feel like maybe we need to start far enough back that I can tell you about the beginning, so you can hear, I don't know, it feels interesting how things begin and then how they like become what they want to be. So I had, the first issue of Boss Ladies magazine had just come out, and it was my like first 6 months of working from home by myself, and I was really, really just lonely. Like, I am a person who's like meant to be in space with people all the time. And I heard of this thing called, what was it called? Was it called like Work Party, or like, I think it was called Work Party. And it was this group who, they were doing like pop-up co-working in restaurants that were open, that were closed for the morning and then open for the evening. So they would like pop up and turn it into an office in the morning. And I was like, oh, I like that. Like, I want to do a version of that too. So I reached out to some women who were within, you know, the Boss Ladies community who had physical spaces, and asked if we could just do like a pop-up co-working session in their restaurant or in their studio. And they said yes. People don't realize when they say yes what a big thing it is, because it's like the first little domino that allows like the thing 10 million dominoes later to happen. But you need those first people to, like, I don't know, tip. And so in the first couple circles were not circles yet. It was just pop-up co-working. We would all bring our computers. We would sit around these restaurants early in the morning, drink coffee, eat pastries, and like work on our projects. And at some point I was like, well, this is not actually useful, because I just want to know what everyone's doing. Like, I don't need to just sit quietly in a space with everyone. Then you could just go to a coffee shop. So then we started these, like, you know, weekly check-ins where we would just do like a quick little, like, well, what are you working on? And then I was like, well, I don't really care what you're working on. Like, I care, like, how are you doing? So the questions became more and more specific, and And now they're so esoteric that everyone rolls their eyes at me, but they secretly love the questions, I think. So like now some of the things that we've been exploring lately are like what feels possible in this moment that has never felt possible before, and like what do we think we'll miss about our life now in 20 years time, and like what we think the future wants to look like and how we want to play a role in that. Um, and for me, I think circle is a million different things to different people. And for me, it's a container, it's like a structure that allows for the most honest form of communication that I've ever experienced. And from that honest communication, the deepest friendships that I've experienced. Yeah.
Jesse, like how many of these iterations or cohorts of circles have you done at this point?
I think November was our 3-year anniversary. So we're another half a year past then. So 3.5 years of weekly circles.
So you have like 200 close friends?
No, not that many. But a lot of people I love a lot.
Do you want, as we wrap up here, do you want to share what are you feeling? Like, do you, like, kind of coming back to the premise of Paper Planes, like not necessarily what you think should or probably will happen given what we're reading on the news and statistically blah blah blah, but the like, what is your heart going, oh dear God, please, this is the one that needs to happen, or like, or anything, what is the whisper of something?
I'm writing a piece right now for the paper, actually. I can't remember if I told you this already, about round voices and square voices. Have we talked about this? No. When I was like 5, I like sat my dad down and had a conversation with him about how he had a round voice and a square voice, and I only really wanted him to talk to me in his round voice. And I had forgotten this until there was a tweet that was circulating a couple weeks back from Representative Tammy Duckworth, I think is her last name. And they had been having Zoom Congress, right? So like they're in a Zoom meeting for the United States Congress, and she thought she was muted, and her little daughter was at the door, and she says to her little daughter something like, just go potty and wash your hands and go downstairs, and mommy will be there in a few minutes. And all of Congress heard this, right? And I feel really, one of the lines in the piece that I keep thinking about is something about how, our homes are the haven of the round voice, and what will it mean for like the next chapter that the present moment is being written from the space of the round voice. I don't know. I feel like right now politics and government and media and entertainment, like everything is being created from the home with the family. And I wonder in what way that softens us and makes us show up to the things that we're creating with the rounder version of ourselves. And so if I could hope for one thing, it would be like, let us build the next chapter from the round voice.
Yes. I have a feeling of what the round voice means. For anyone who maybe could wonder a little bit, could you round that out a titch? What are the defining characteristics of round voice, and say, the day comes when we're not perhaps living everything and running Congress from our homes, how do we keep the round voice out there? Let us know, how do we bring those qualities out there? What is the quality of the round voice?
Mm. Okay, so square voice is obviously like, um, oh, it's like the voice of real estate agents and lawyers, and like it's like it
That's
drops and it's
I know.
all pokey.
Yes, in the
It's like
corporate, like, is it the, like, the logical,
yeah,
the
and it's that but it's actually it's not even in what's being spoken. It's like in how it is being spoken, right? So
yeah.
there's part of the piece where like I used to call my dad's office, and this isn't about my dad, right? Like everyone has this and does this. This was just like my reference point for it as a child. But I I would call my dad's office, and he would answer like, "Sergeant Sonksen, how can I help you?" And I was like, "Hi, Daddy, it's Chelsea." And then he was like, "Hey, Sunshine, how are you? What's going on?" Right? And it was like all the edges just melted and got all drippy. And I just remember thinking as a kid, like, doesn't everybody want the round voice? Because the square one's kind of scary, you know? And I don't know. I worked in real estate for a minute, and there were so many square voices that were like masqueraded with a browiness that and like that familiarity that like I think they thought that that was making it more round, and yet it was just like just as prickly and sharp, just like the bro version. And I don't know. I feel like so. Part of your question was, um, like, how do we bring the round voice out into the world when we emerge from our homes? And the truth is, I have no idea. Like, I just think maybe it's about wanting to.
Yep, yep. And you're making me think. I was listening to the radio this morning, and there are many things we're all hearing right now as we move through this moment. One of the things that I heard was a report about nurses and doctors in hospitals in New York, and they were being asked what is different right now. What are you experiencing in your normal work environment? Are you seeing a difference? And one thing that they shared was, oh yeah, it wasn't the news. Excuse me. I was listening to an Earth Day summit on the Pachamama Alliance website, and it was Paul Hawken, who wrote The Ecology of Commerce, I believe. And he was sharing that these nurses and doctors were saying, I've never received so much gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
And that, where I think, honestly, we could basically insert what you just said about square voices, where I think they were used to living in a land of square voices, that he was saying they get chastised if they're a moment late or whatever. People are just so much, again, let's try it out, using the round voice of, thank you for being here.
Yeah.
And another thing that it makes me think of is, I was listening to something on compassion the other day, and the question is, like, how does one generate compassion? You don't, like, how do you try to feel compassion, or how do you make compassion happen? And the way that this person suggested was, give kindness, give something, that in the giving the heart opens, that it's actually not like, don't wait for the heart to open before you give, actually give and then watch what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe as like a little friend to the, like, if for those who are interested in finding their rounder voice outside when that moment comes, or bringing their rounder voice even on the Zoom thing, or the online thing where the square voice was normal. The first thing that comes to my mind when I hear you, Chelsea, is your dad feels safe with you. And when we feel safe, we go to the round voice. And if we feel scared or threatened, we need to go to the square voice, because we think that that's the one that protects us.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how do we create more and more, and this will be for future episodes, that psychological safety and that sense of safety inside, that we don't have to put the armor on out here through our voices, etc., but that there's actually a place that's so safe inside that we can exist in that rounder, softer way.
Yes, please.
Which I so know we create in these communities. So thank you for, you've just taken us on a journey of circles and creativity, and using, basically the bad news to create the good news, and like respond to it through these thoughtful ways, and gathering community together to make this happen. Thank you for bringing us into your home. And I need to ask you, for anyone who wants to learn more about you, get involved with Circle, register for a paper plane to be flown against their day, is there anything, how can we, I think I'm just going to need to include all of your links in the text. And is there anything else that maybe isn't online that I can find that people here should know about?
I feel like most everything can be found from the Eredita website or Instagram. So the website is Eredita, EREDITA.us.
You are someone who has brought me immense hope, inspiration, and a sense of feeling okay to be in the tenderness, and that is still a strong place to be. Because for anyone who knows you, your tenderness is equally matched by your fierceness. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what more you create.
Oh, I love you. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye. Thanks for joining us on Path and Purpose. Before you go, is there something you want to take with you? Perhaps a story that sparked a new thought or feeling for how you want to live closer to what matters most. Add your voice to the circle by leaving a note in the comments, and we hope you'll continue walking the path with us on SoundCloud, iTunes, and YouTube for stories from future guests about making meaning in this emerging world. Until then, as Dad says, let's be safe and have fun.